Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Dr. Angela Queen, your Mental Ease host. I'm a board-certified family nurse practitioner and psych mental health nurse practitioner. And in this space, we're going to talk honestly about mental health, what it is, how it affects us, and how we can reach our better self. This podcast is designed for anyone who has felt overwhelmed, anxious, stuck, or just unsure of how to manage their emotional health. I'm hoping these podcast sessions will help your mental health and give you some mental ease. After all, mental ease is all about me. So today's podcast will be the second episode in the series of 3 that focuses on grief. Whether you're grieving the loss of a loved one, a relationship, your health, an animal, or a version of a life that you expected, this episode is for you. In this segment, we're going to revisit symptoms of depression and see the similarities between depression and grief. If you remember back a couple podcasts before, the common symptoms of depression are persistent low mood, emptiness, withdrawal, loss of interest, loss of pleasure, fatigue, changes in sleep or appetite, difficulty concentrating, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, hopelessness, that impair your functioning. With grief, they're very similar symptoms. You do have the sadness or the emptiness. You also can have anger and irritability. Could be guilt or regret, anxiety or fear, problems with concentration, and then physical symptoms, fatigue, aches, appetite changes. The difference between grief and depression is that someone who is grieving will be capable of experiencing moments of joy. They'll actually have some wave of emotions that change from minute to minute. So reminiscing might cause them to either laugh or cry. They might be happy one minute and sad the next. Emotions vary depending on what's being said, what's being seen, or what's being heard. And the most obvious difference is that the symptoms are actually tied to a specific loss or a recent loss. So can grief precipitate or evolve into depression? Absolutely. Can grief cause an occurrence of symptoms in someone with a history of depression that may be functioning well? Absolutely. Can someone with depression grieve without fear of worsening their depression condition? Absolutely. Can someone who's had complicated grief heal without being diagnosed with depression? Yes. But it does not occur without purposeful intervention to lessen the grief influence in their life and to prevent alterations in their functioning. The important thing to know is that when loss occurs, grieving requires intentional interventions that guide the healing process. This is especially true for those who already have depression or have mental health conditions. So it's important to know, when do I need to seek professional help? You should seek professional help when your symptoms persist beyond what is expected healing time. Now, we've already talked about that there's no timelines per se, but if the symptoms aren't lessening, they're staying equally distressing or even worsening, that's a time to seek professional help. When your functioning significantly declines in the wake of the grief process, that's a time to seek professional help. And of course, anytime you have suicidal thoughts, you should always seek professional. This actually happens more often than not, that when you lose somebody that you're really close to during the grieving process, you may experience some times where you're like, I don't want to be in this world anymore because they're not here. That's not unusual. But if you really have suicidal thoughts and thinking about you really want to harm yourself and you know how you would do it, or you really believe that the world would be better off without you, I really encourage you to reach out to somebody, your friend, your pastor, a family member, or if you have a therapist, reach out to your therapist as soon as possible. Another important thing to consider is that everyone who has suffered a loss are at risk for unhealthy grieving. So the person that you think is the strongest, most faithful, emotionally stable person can still experience unhealthy grieving. It depends on what was lost, how the loss even occurred. Was it traumatic? Was it unexpected? And how their life changes because of the loss. So don't look at somebody and think, boy, they got it all together. I can't believe that they're doing this well. Never assume that. You should always make a conscious, intentional effort to check on them, on your friend, your loved one who has experienced a loss. There may be appear to be handling things well, but they may be crumbling on the inside. And if we don't ask, we don't know. Sometimes they may not even want to talk about it. They'll kind of say they don't want to talk about it, and that's fine too. It's their choice, but maybe just being there. One simple way is just sitting there with them. You don't have to have the right words. No one expects you to have the right words, but they just need your presence. So maybe just being there is enough for them to open up and make sure that they're not having any kind of negative feelings. Make sure they're not experiencing any unhealthy coping during their grief process. We're going to talk about something that is very difficult. And it is holiday and anniversary grief. When grief returns unexpectedly, grief doesn't disappear over time, it changes. And often it returns most strongly during holidays, anniversaries, or meaningful dates. Today, we're going to talk about why grief resurfaces and what's happening in the brain and in the nervous system, and kind of how to navigate these times with compassion and realistic expectations. Important dates are like emotional markers, and they remind the brain and the body of what has been lost. Examples of these could be holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, death dates, first holidays after loss, life events where maybe the person's absent, like a child graduating from high school or a daughter getting married. So during these times, clinically, what's going on is the brain stores our memories emotionally, not just cognitively. So these dates carry meaning even when we're not consciously thinking about them. So understand that grief returning around these times is not regression. It's actually just remembrance. And oftentimes you'll have a mixed set of emotions when this occurs, like you'll have sadness. And then also at the same time, you'll have gratitude or joy followed by guilt or numbness and irritability at the same time. Grief doesn't follow a calendar, but it often responds to one. So now let's talk about the nervous system and memory. Grief lives not just in the mind, but in your whole nervous system. And guess who is responsible for that? The amygdala. The amygdala is very important in storing our emotional memory. And it can store it with sensory cues such as smell, songs, traditions, but these things activate your memory, and then the body starts to react before there's even a conscious awareness that it's happening. You might feel tightening in your chest when you're entering a familiar place. You may begin suddenly crying during a song, and you may just start feeling very irritable for no particular reason. Your body remembers before your brain can explain what's happening. So understand that physical symptoms during grief seasons are normal, and that those symptoms can be associated with increased anxiety or low mood. The reactions are not signs of weakness. They're actually signs that your nervous system is responding to something that was meaningful that you've lost. So I hope explaining it a little bit will help you understand how those memories can actually evoke the grieving process again. But remember, it doesn't mean you're healing. It's just your body's normal response to memory. How do we manage that? We obviously can't change the calendar. We can't take Christmas out of the calendar. I wish we could, though, because I would spend a lot less money. But we can't remove Christmas. We can't remove birthdays. We can't remove anniversaries. Even if we could take them off the calendar, we can't take them out of our brain. So we need to manage the expectations of the holidays. Holidays come with expectations from everybody. Oh, you must come. Oh, I can't believe you're not going to be there. Oh, I know you miss him, but you really need to be here. So they come with expectations, and sometimes they come with unrealistic ones. Pressure to be joyful, the pressure to keep the traditions alive or keep the traditions the same, the pressure to comfort others, the pressure to move on. Holidays and anniversaries put a lot of pressure on someone who is grieving. And it puts a lot of pressure on somebody that's dealing with depression. Just understand that it's okay if this season looks different for you. It's okay. But we're going to manage and make some realistic planning moves to help you not put too many expectations on yourself. So maybe scaling back with some of your traditions will help. Maybe creating new rituals will help. But just allowing flexibility for that and say that we don't always have to do it like we did before when Daddy was alive doesn't mean that you're dishonoring him. It just means that you're learning new ways to manage the expectations. You should be allowed to grieve and participate or grieve and step back. It should be your choice. It should not be everybody else putting pressure on you. It should be your choice. So therefore, you're in control of what your expectations are. And you're going to realize that some moments may feel okay and you're okay being there. And then other moments may feel overwhelming. But those two concepts can't exist at the same time. But you are the one that controls what you're willing to do. So take your power back and understand that any expectations that are put on you are because you put them on you and not anybody else. In the next segment, we're going to talk about how to say no. If you hear absolutely nothing else from this podcast, please pay attention right now. This is the most important section. One of the most important coping skills during grief seasons is permission. Permission to say no to gatherings, permission to leave early, permission to change plans at the last minute, permission to spend time alone, and permission to ask for support or help. So protecting your emotional energy is not being selfish. It's necessary. And sometimes when we say no, people misunderstand that. And so if that's the case and people are giving you a hard time by saying no, change the context a little and say, I'm just really taking this season slowly, or I may not be able to attend, but I do appreciate the invitation. Or oftentimes just say, I'll let you know closer to the date. Just remember, though, you don't owe anyone a version of yourself that doesn't exist right now. So if grief is resurfacing for you, please remember you're not going backward. You're just responding to love, loss, and memory. So take a few minutes if you are grieving and ask yourself what dates feel the hardest for you and what support do you need during that season of remembrance? What expectations have you put on yourself that you can release? Grief doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means something mattered. So just be gentle with yourself, especially during the seasons that remember for you unconsciously. So, in closing, if you're grieving, please hear me and know that you are not weak because you're struggling with it and you're not doing this the wrong way. Remember, you have the permission to say no. You have the control to manage the expectations that you put on yourself and other people put on you. Next podcast, we'll be doing a little bit on the grief workbook. We'll do a little interactive. We'll also be doing a little bit of meditation. So I hope you will join me and check that out and see if it's beneficial for you. But for now, just want to say thank you for spending time with me today. Remember, you're not broken, you're adapting. And as always, consider that mental health is all about mental ease, and that is all about me. Until next time, just breathe.